That's the one. You're listening to 99.3 Nigeria Info's The Sunny Side. The Sunny Side. Welcome. My name's Joyce. 99.3 Nigeria Info, The Sunny Side. Welcome to The Sunny Side. You're listening to Joyce, of course, but I did tell you about a minute ago that we have our guest joining us this afternoon, Dr. Muda Yusuf, former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Sir, you're welcome to the show this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for having me.
It's so good to have you here, particularly now we're trying to understand the government's trajectory economic wise. Nigerians are feeling or bearing the brunt, and I would say it's even a difficult weight to bear given the complexity of the economic situation in Nigeria, but even worse, direct implication on the Nigerian in Nigeria today. Now, the president a few days ago came out to give a public address, and he highlighted some issues Nigerians are trying to comprehend fully how this impacts their lives directly or indirectly. I think the first place to go would be the fiscal side. According to the president, he said aggregate government revenue has more than doubled, hitting over 9.1 trillion naira in the first half of 2024 compared to the first half of 2023. I want to ask you, sir, does this take into consideration the devaluation of the naira, the weakness of the naira against the dollar, and the fact that because this is a dollarized economy, we're usually forced to convert our naira to dollar? So does this really mean we have money, or is this, I don't know, an attempt to give us hope? Indeed, when monetary terms or in nominal terms, there isn't too much to be happy about as far as the economy goes.
Well, the economy has been facing enormous challenges over the past 1 year. The macroeconomic fundamentals, as we call it, fundamentals that relates to revenue, relate to fiscal deficit, relates to exchange rates, have been extremely very, very weak. And this has been affecting productivity in the economy. And when we factor in the phenomenon of inflation into some of the nominal numbers, just as you said, the real value, or in real terms, we cannot celebrate too much of growth in nominal terms. Imagine if you convert, for instance, these revenues, you convert the dollar. It's possible that it's not even as high as what we used to have. So the phenomenon of inflation, which was driven largely by the devaluation of the currency, has actually reduced the value of whatever we have in terms of income, either for the government, for the individuals, and even for corporate organizations. But by the time you discount for inflation, you see that not much progress has been made. So these are consequences, in my view, of some of these reforms. And as the president said, these reforms are clearly inevitable, at least to pull the economy back from the brink. So the consequences of the reform has been very, very challenging. So the issue is how to manage these consequences, both at the economic level and at the social level.
Yes, sir. But one wonders why the president would then put this out as something to highlight an achievement, if in nominal terms, it's probably not in itself better than they did last year.
No, we need to validate that. We need to do a proper computation to see the growth in this revenue, because it's not as if the growth is completely insignificant. Because if you look at revenue situation generally, it has perhaps even doubled, in nominal terms. What I'm saying is that if you discount it for inflation, the growth may not be as high as it looks.
Or as it
it's just like the company profits.
Or as it was made
to
sound.
It's not. Yes. It's just like company profits. When profits are saying that they have made $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and all of that, by the time you discount for inflation, you see that the growth of those profits,
so
performance of companies have not been that great. That's the point I'm making.
Thank you. Productivity is gradually increasing. This is actually according to the president. He says productivity is gradually increasing in the non-oil sector, and he speaks on the fact that 2 foreign direct investments have been signed, and it's over $500 million since then. And the last time you were here, I must have expected you to give like a direct evaluation of the economic cost of the companies that have left this country on the Nigerian economy. Now that the president is saying we've had 2 direct foreign investments come in to the tune of over $500 million, I want to find out if this is significant in comparison to the companies that have been here and left for whatever economic reasons that they found unfavorable.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because of the challenge, particularly around our foreign exchange environment, many companies have left. And even those who are existing, we are seeing the amount of losses that many of them have declared on account of foreign exchange losses, particularly those who are in the manufacturing sector. But that is not to diminish the fact that even in the midst of all of these challenges, we still have some investors that are coming in. In some of the spaces that some companies have left, we have seen some other companies come to take their place. Take the case of a company like Procter & Gamble, that produces diapers and some of these baby wears and so on. And if you look at the supermarket space now, if you go to a typical supermarket, you see quite a number of different brands of diapers and detergents, which are some of the things that P&G used to produce. So some other companies are coming up, but that is not to take away the point that the situation is extremely, very, very challenging. But the reality is that this economy is a big economy. So even in the middle of these challenges, those opportunities are still there because of the size of the market. And the president referenced the issue of the oil and gas sector. In fairness, in the last couple of months, there have been some new incentives that have been given to the gas investors. There have been some tweaking of the Petroleum Industry Act, to give more incentives to those who are investing in. And some investors are already coming into the gas space. Even though we have challenges, of course, in the oil and gas sector, particularly those who are onshore exploration. A lot of challenges are there. But some investors are already showing interest because we have actually more potentials in gas than in crude oil. But unfortunately, over time, we have not taken a proper advantage of that. But on the whole, the enormity of challenges is something that you cannot afford to underestimate. It's still quite challenging.
Okay, I was hoping that you could simplify the language when you say the enormity of the challenge or challenges that we face in the country. Are our challenges so out of comprehension that it would take all our lives to fix the problems that beset us? Or is this politics, a political game, persons taking advantage of the Nigerian economic space to swindle the Nigerian economy and impoverish the people? What exactly, in your view, do you perceive to be the obstacle to our collective prosperity?
Well, for me, I think what we are dealing with, to a large extent, is the challenges of correcting some terrible distortions in the economy.
Would that be corruption, or
it's like a patient?
Is that corruption, or is it mismanagement, misalignment? Like, what can it be? Because if we don't name it, we can't fix it.
First is policy misalignment. We have a major policy issue in our oil and gas sector over the years. We have a regime of an oil and gas sector that is dominated by the public sector. Look at our downstream sector, for instance. When I talk about downstream, I'm talking about petroleum refining and related businesses in the oil and gas. For more than a decade, close to 2 decades, we have not seen any major private investment in that space. Look at the case of the refineries. Refineries have been down for close to a decade or more. And look at the implication of that for our economy, for our exchange rate, for our foreign reserves, for jobs, or even this problem of subsidy. It is because of the policy environment, because of some entrenched interest in oil and gas over the years. That is what has brought us to this situation. Why would we, as an oil-producing country, not have a refinery that is functioning for over 10 years? So this is a major shortcoming which needed to be corrected. And you cannot correct this if you don't, tamper with issue of pricing, issue of the Petroleum Industry Act to bring private investors into the space. Because the bureaucrats and politicians cannot continue to run our oil and gas sector. We have not been able to unlock value. This is a sector that should be giving us a lot of value. We can be leveraging upon, as we have in UAE and some other Middle East countries. The sector has become a liability for the country. So the mismanagement in the oil and gas sector alone is a very, very big issue, and it's something that requires some heavy lifting by way of reforming the sector, decoupling the sector from the bureaucrats, decoupling the sector from the politicians. It's a major reform initiative. So that is one major misalignment or distortion that I was referring to.
Okay.
We also have our foreign exchange environment. Again, that's a bit tricky because we are coming from a regime where we have what we call administrative allocation of foreign exchange. For you to get the foreign exchange, you have to know somebody and all of that. Now, we said that is not good. Yes, a lot of us who are economists said that we should go for a market-driven exchange rate. Here we are in a regime of market-driven exchange rate, but you can also see the consequences. So some of this economic orthodoxy to require some interrogation. So the reform processes are things that meant well. The government meant well through the reforms. But the outcomes from a social perspective has been extremely difficult to manage, even from an economic perspective. That is not to take away the issue of governance, issue of cost of governance, corruption, and things that still exist. I'm not dismissing that. What I'm saying is that there are deep-rooted issues in the economy that needed to be dealt with. And that is the basis, and that is the reason for some of these reforms. Yes, there has to be some interventions. If you take our manufacturing sector, for instance, the biggest problem they are facing today in terms of production is a problem around energy cost, electricity cost, and cost of diesel. Happily now, we are seeing Dangote coming up, at least maybe we see some traction, and we are beginning to see some traction with respect to domestic refining of diesel, with respect to domestic refining of jet fuel, which is aviation fuel. But the big elephant in the room is petrol. So by the time he gets into that space and we're able to refine a lot more of our petrol internally, we'll have made some significant progress. Because we are spending almost 30% of our foreign exchange and it's importing petroleum products. If we are doing that, how are we going to fix our exchange rates? If we are exerting that much of pressure on our foreign reserves just to import petroleum products for an oil-producing country, it's an anomaly. So these are some of the fundamental issues that I think we need to deal with, and I must say they require some heavy lifting.
Okay.
They require some heavy lifting in terms of some major reforms.
You see, sir, the reason I really am pleased to have you here is, besides just gleaning from your expertise, I can also glean from your conscience. So here's a question I want to ask you. The road to hell, they say, is paved with good intentions. So a policy can appear to be good, and its actual outplay or the outcome of that policy not be good. Can this administration be said to be working for the people? Because here's the actual context I'm trying to provide you here. If you implement a policy and in honest observation, you realize that the policy you have implemented is not benefiting the people, how difficult can it be for you to retrace your steps, reevaluate the policy, and re-implement a new policy? Now, that hardly happens, except you want to prove me wrong in a moment, because it seems as though we talk about that one policy for 10 years, for 20 years. We talk about it so long, and it begins to appear as though the solution is in the stars. Even if it were in the stars, stars have fallen. So why is it so hard for this administration to retrace its steps?
Well, for some major reforms, if you want the economy to still remain standing, you cannot completely reverse some reforms. For instance, I've heard people say that fuel price should go to 200 naira. You should be selling the dollar at 300 naira or 400 naira. Unless we fix the fundamentals, for you to bring the dollar down, you need a major production in terms of generating foreign exchange. It's not something you can just wish. Dollar is not our currency. And for you to boost the availability of the dollar, to drive down the exchange rate, you must increase your output in terms of export. I just told you how we have mismanaged our oil and gas sector.
Yeah, but the people shouldn't pay but sir, the people are made to pay the price. And that in itself doesn't show that the policy is for the people. Because you say subsidy is gone, and this is like the eventual outcome of that singular policy, and every other underlying factor to that policy led to a protest. So how come it's so difficult? If you're unable to sell it at 200, why not 500? Why not make an adjustment that signals to the people that the government is working for you? Or is the government really working for the people?
Yes, I agree with you. If we have a policy and the outcomes are challenging as it is, of course you have to go back to the drawing board. It's like when you have to do a surgery that is inevitable. If you undertake the surgery, it is the responsibility of the physician to ensure that the pain of the surgery as minimized as possible. Because if the surgery was to save life, it's the option of saving the life or bearing the pain of the surgery. Which one will you choose? So I take your point. Some of these reforms for me are inevitable, but the outcomes of the reforms will have been managed better. That is what I take from your position.
Okay, sir.
If we are saying that, okay, this is going to bring this pain, what are we putting on the table to ease the pain? If you are managing the forex in a particular way, we are saying, okay, we are floating the currency. If the outcomes is becoming very, very difficult and unmanageable, we can revisit the outcomes. Because some of these policies are also Western model policies of economic management. Some of them are about the orthodoxy of economic policy. This is a different environment from the West. If it is not working well, it should not be cast in stone. So I agree with your proposition that if a policy is not giving the right outcomes, you go back to the drawing board, look at your own peculiarities, and you look at how you tweak it. I agree perfectly with it. Okay. But some of these fundamental reforms are completely unavoidable. Okay. If we don't want the system to collapse completely.
Yeah, and so the tragedy of not being honest or direct in the approach can lead to something like, one of the line items, according to the president's speech, says, my administration has shown commitment to the youth by setting up students' loan scheme. And he says, I signed the minimum wage into law. The new minimum wage is 70,000 naira. In a nominal context, Nigerians are worse off today than they were in 2022, when minimum wage was 30,000. Now, please tell me I'm wrong.
No, you are not wrong. I mean, we are all in this economy together. We go to the same market. We know what the price of what the cost of a bag of rice was 2 years ago. We know what the cost of bread was 2 years ago. We know what it is today. So there will be massive erosion of the purchasing power of the people. I agree with you, even with the 70,000 people are worse off. So that is why, again, it's a governance issue. We have to do everything that we can to bring down the cost of living. That's extremely very important. And it's not just about using monetary policy, it's also about deploying fiscal policy. To look at the cost of production, I just told about the implication of energy costs for the pricing, and the implication of insecurity for our agricultural production. So these are implications of logistics cost. So unless we deal with all of these costs, it will be very difficult to bring down the cost of living. And of course, the issue of corruption. So it's not an easy task, I must tell you. It's not something like just going to your bedroom and switching on the light or switching it off. It's a lot of hard work. Because I told you, these are fundamental problems that will take some time to fix. but it's not as if it's completely impossible. If you're able to do the right things, if you're able to make it easier for those who are in production, those who are in agriculture, to resume and upscale their productivity. If we're able to do that, we'll be out of this quagmire.
Okay, sir, last time you were here, this statement, I'm not sure how long the conversation may have been going on. I'm not sure if this is a promise that is about to be made, well, a promise that's about to be fulfilled, or something that is still a thought and a dream in a pipe. Here, the president's speech goes, payments of 1 billion naira each are also being made to large manufacturers under our single-digit loans to boost manufacturing outputs and stimulate growth. What do you know about this singular line item? Have manufacturers been giving 1 billion naira each? Is this a promise?
Well, it's a statement that has been made, I think, a few months ago. It's a policy pronouncement. As I speak to you, I'm not in a position to confirm that the manufacturers have got this 1 billion naira because, mind you, the president referred large manufacturers. But what I will say is that in the light of the current high interest rates, holistically and systemically, we need to create a concessionary financing window for businesses, particularly in the real sector of the economy. I'm talking about agriculture, I'm talking about manufacturing, I'm talking about even real estate. Because you cannot do business with an interest rate of almost 30%. What is the return on investment?
So, sir, now the president
said... apart from this...
Okay, go ahead, finish your thought, because I wanted to correct, well, the president said a single
apart digit. From this intervention...
Yeah.
Apart from this intervention, which the president has said, we need to, upscale the capacity of our development finance institutions. Because this is a case of what you call market failure in economics. The market system cannot fix every problem. Where the market principle cannot fix a problem, the government has a responsibility to intervene. So providing a development finance window is a way of correcting market failure in the financial markets. Okay. Because you can't expect a manufacturer or somebody in agriculture to go and borrow money at 30%. How is he going to break even?
Okay, sir, even if
so the development finance institutions, Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, Development Bank of Nigeria, and some of them, we need to revamp them and make them do a lot more.
Okay.
To give single-digit interest rates that has long tenure for about 10 years. That is what production needs. Production cannot cope with 30% interest rate with less than 1 year tenure. It can't function. The economy cannot grow that way.
Okay, so
that is the route I think we should.
Okay, so, well, I like your optimism regarding the single-digit loans, but given the struggle in the economy, disposable income right now is pretty much barely existent. One wonders, I saw an article this morning, I didn't thoroughly finish it. It reported that Jumia reported a loss in her second quarter of 2024. And I'm guessing that there are other companies that are reporting losses. Nominally, do you even think that a single digit, and we don't even know if it's a 5 or a 4 or a 9%, he says single digit, we don't know if it's 0.5, I'm not sure what this single digit interest rate is. But given the struggle in the economy, and the fact that there are companies, even though still in business, reporting losses, do you suggest that even this can be advantageous? Because I would have suggested, and you can correct the notion, that businesses be giving, loans on no interest, at least for a period, because the struggle appears to be choking out even existing businesses as they are. What's your view on that?
It's not out of place. It's not out of place. If you give zero interest in the light of the current situation, it is not out of place. But what is important is that we should have highly concessionary interest rates, whether it is 5%, whether it's 3%, because you still cannot compare that to the financial market rate of 30%. So if you are even still given 5%, it still makes a lot of sense. If you are given 7%, it still makes a lot of sense. But more importantly, is to look at other factors that are putting pressure on businesses. For instance, the exchange rate. We need to come up with more creative ways of dealing with this exchange rate issue. And you cannot strengthen the exchange rate if you don't fix our oil and gas sector, unfortunately. And these are some big elephants in the room. We also need to fast track our import substitution. Whoever is producing to substitute import, just like Dangote is doing, we should give all the support, not to put obstacles on their way, because some people are benefiting from the regime of importation. So we have to deal with this matter from export upscaling perspective and from the perspective of import substitution. Whatever we are able to produce locally, we should not be spending our foreign exchange to be importing them.
All right, thank you. So I have a number of questions for you. I wanted to quickly.
So this is where I think we need to further interrogate this idea of very extremely liberal foreign exchange market. A private jet must not be competing for forex. Must not be competing for forex with somebody who wants to import raw materials.
Sorry, sir.
So we need to interrogate some of these things.
Pardon me, sir. I lost your last sentence. You said a private jet should not do what? I kind of lost your sentence there for a moment.
No, the point I was making is that we should not have a foreign exchange market where everybody can just go there and be demanding for foreign exchange. There has to be a way to circumscribe, to determine what our priority should be. Somebody who is seeking foreign exchange to import machinery for agri production, for food production, for manufacturing, should not be in the same market with somebody who wants to use a foreign exchange to go and buy a Rolls Royce or a private jet. That's the point I'm making. Perfect. Because these are some of the shortcomings of a completely liberal market system. We have to revisit some of these things.
Okay. I have a minute before a break, and the break takes us to the news update.
So that we get our priorities right. And that's what I was saying about interrogating the orthodoxy.
Finish your thought, yeah?
No, I was saying that we should interrogate the orthodoxy of economic policy.
Yeah.
Given what we have seen in the last 1 year. That is the point I was making.
Thank you. I'm having a little internet delay. That's why we keep clashing. Oh, so, sir, if you can hear me, we're a few seconds away from the top of the hour. We're going to quickly go off on a break, and I'll come right back to you, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate Lagos. We're speaking with Dr. Muda Yusuf, immediate past DG, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and you can pretty much glean both from his reason and economic point of view as to the location where Nigerian economy is situated today. And with that, you can make your own determination of where we can be a year, 2, 3 years from now. It's 1 p.m. on the clock. We're off on a break. We'll be right back. Do not go anywhere. The news update is next. My name's Joyce. We're Nigeria Info.
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
The news update on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Here is the news update. The Chiefs of Defense Staff of the Economic Community of West African States are meeting at the Defense Headquarters, Abuja. The meeting is chaired by Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who is the chairman of the ECOWAS Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff. Present at the meeting are the Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Taga, Chairman, Senate Committee on Defense, Ahmed Lawan, and the Chief of Defense Staff of ECOWAS countries, except Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. A soldier is now in detention for killing a protester in Zaria, Kaduna State. Army spokesperson Major General Onyemuwa announced this in a statement on Wednesday. He said the unfortunate incident happened on the 6th of August when Army troops were mobilized to stop some hoodlums in Samaru, a suburb of Zaria. Moving on, the organized civil society says it is not satisfied with the continued use of violence against peaceful protesters and abduction of protest leaders by security agents in Nigeria. The head coordinating Secretariat's United Action Front of Civil Society, Olawale Okunoyi, frowned at the alleged use of thugs to attack protesters in Abuja and Lagos. The group is demanding immediate release of Michael Lennon and other protest leaders alleged to be currently detained by security agents. And on the foreign scene, 2 people have been killed in Grove, Germany, after a hotel building partially collapsed, while several others remained trapped under the rubble. Rescue operations are ongoing, with more than 200 emergency services personnel at the scene. According to local police, 14 people were inside the hotel at the time of the incident. That's the news update, Lagos. It is back to the sunny side with Joyce on 99.3 Nigeria Info. I am Yvonne Ohaifo.
What's that station again?
Oh yeah, Camo, come
No.
by. Here's one thing you need to know about yourself. So like here we dey talk.
Yep, bullseye. That's the one.
You're listening to 99.3 Nigeria Info's The Sunny Side. The Sunny Side. Welcome. My name's Joyce.
99.3 Nigeria Info, The Sunny Side. My name is Joyce. Welcome, Lagos. And yes, we have the pleasure of the person of Dr. Muda Yusuf, immediate past DG of the Nigeria Chamber of Commerce. And I'm looking through a number of the questions you have sent in for our guest. I would just run through my own question and then attempt to ask a few lateral questions that have an implication to the conversation we're having this afternoon. Sir, thank you so much. And again, for your time, I do appreciate. My next question to you is, the president, according to the president, I have directed the tariffs and other import duties be removed on rice, wheat, maize, sorghum, drugs, and other manufacturing and medical supplies for the next 6 months. Now, yesterday, in the news, it was reported that importers from the north complained about customs not implementing the directive. And given the economic situation, they report that the directive should have been implemented speedily. I want to know what you're privy to and why you think the bureaucracy gets in the way of governance and the urgency with which this moment in our lives requires.
Well, one of the challenges we have in our economy is the bureaucracy. Because the bureaucracy is the apparatus for implementation of government policies. So even when government makes pronouncements that are laudable, that can impact positively on the people, sometimes the bureaucracy gets on the way in terms of implementation. And I'm personally worried about the lag between government pronouncements and the implementation of those pronouncements. And this is one example of it. I listened to the Customs CG yesterday on TV when they were holding the meeting on security meeting with the Chief of Defense Staff and other service chiefs. And he said that within 1 week, this implementation will commence. He said they were still waiting for communication from the office of the finance minister. Because the custom cannot, just based on a speech or a pronouncement from the president, begins to implement. The structure that they operate is that they have to be instructed by the fiscal authorities officially that this is the new policy, these are the items, go ahead and implement. And from what I heard them say yesterday on TV, he said within 1 week, the implementation will commence. But having said that, we need to worry about the bureaucracy and the role that the bureaucracy plays in the implementation or otherwise of our government policy. It's a major issue that we need to address.
Okay, sir, I know during your time as DG, I hope my assumption is correct, the Buhari Administration was in power. Now, I want to quickly look back before we look to the present. Femi Adesina, special advisor to the president, on one occasion listed a number of things that the president then did for the benefit of the Nigerian people. So they listed Empower, NYSC monthly allowance, 75 billion naira youth investment fund, special public works program, $20 million fund for Nigerian tech innovators and entrepreneurs, amongst other things, including this market money, these other zero interest to small businesses and stuff. During your time as DG, how did the economy fare? Now, here is context. Sometimes I think that the objective of commerce is to help us fully comprehend the weight, the scale of both our economic capability and eventual prosperity. Now, I guess you may have a better language in order to help contextualize, your field in commerce. But I'm wondering, what did the Buhari government achieve as far as growth goes that this government is left to develop on? Or did it not achieve anything? Because when you look at how much money was quoted for some of the government projects that were aimed for youth development or youth empowerment, we do not necessarily see any physical or actual development from where we were when they were in government to where we are now. Or was there a development that this particular administration may have eroded? Do you understand how the context I'm trying to paint here?
Well, that's a very broad question. I am not part of the administration. I wasn't part of the administration.
But how did the economy
and I can't speak for either the current administration.
Okay.
Yes, but you see, generally, I would say that during the Buhari administration, first, of course, the cost of living wasn't as bad as it is now. Maybe they took some steps, some of which we are paying for now, which were not obvious to us at that time, to almost like kicking the can down the road. But I must say that there was a lot of emphasis during that administration on domestic production, on farming. We had a lot of emphasis on growing of rice and all of that. Even though there were a lot of issues around the management of the finances that were related to those initiatives. But at least there was a lot of emphasis on domestic production of food. And there was a very heavy emphasis on protection of domestic industries. I know at that time the then CBN governor was very, very passionate about ensuring that whatever we consume and we produce. And the president, in fact, that was a mantra for them at that time. Even though his approach, again, unorthodox, and also had a lot of issues and all of that, corruption and the rest of it. But again, we cannot completely dismiss the intention, because although you have said that intentions don't matter, but I believe intentions still matter to ensure that you have domestic production. So that passion, I think, I can. But again, some of the hard decisions that were supposed to be taken by the administration were avoided, and now the current administration are now saddled with the responsibility of clearing the mess. Because at that time, we were selling a lot of our crude forward sales. We were securitizing the crude sales. In other words, selling our crude oil upfront to be able to generate foreign exchange. We securitize even our foreign reserves to be able to generate foreign exchange. So all of this is artificially was propping up the exchange rate. But we didn't know where those things were coming from until we saw the audit report for the central bank, which was released a few months ago. So that is what it is. But again, fundamentally, I'm not sure that much has changed. During his 8 years, we were still importing petroleum products. It is the biggest, the heaviest burden on this economy today. For 8 years, we could not fix the refineries. We are spending close to $10 billion annually importing petroleum products. And I must tell you, that is the root cause of the problem we are facing today. Because if you look at all this issue of cost of production, cost of living crisis, it has a great deal to do with the devaluation of the currency. Because we have spent a lot of our currency importing petroleum products and issues of insecurity as well. Because our farmers can no longer go to the farm. Then look at the issue of the oil theft in the Niger Delta. How much were we able to do to nip that in the bud? For 8 years, this thing became heavily entrenched. So these are some of the terrible legacies that was left behind by the Buhari administration.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily have an answer to the question of youth in the country. Did the youths get better by the schemes initiated by government projects, or were these just figures on paper that pretty much did not necessarily touch the lives in any remarkable way, the lives of young Nigerians? Because I'm just about to go into what the current administration is offering the youths. They say 570 billion naira to be released to 36 states to expand livelihood support to their citizens. 600,000 nano businesses have benefited from nano grants. 75,000 beneficiaries have been processed to receive 1 million naira micro and small business single-digit interest rate loans starting this month. The government said that they created 240,000 jobs through five so far, and 5 more hubs are in progress. I want to find out whether you have any data regarding the growth of youth, particularly the working class. Are we growing? Because the Buhari administration, in his view, wanted to get 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. And that was as good as a dream could get, because we do not know how many Nigerians got out of poverty. In fact, there was an international evaluation of the multi-dimensional poverty in Nigeria, estimated to be 133 million of us. So I do not think that the Buhari administration achieved what they wanted to achieve. And here we are now in a new administration. Do you think that the youth population did better, or did they not achieve anything? Did the last administration not achieve anything with the youth? Can this administration do anything differently to achieve something with youth development and economic advancement?
Well, personally, I'm not a fan of many of these interventions. I believe a lot more in making sure that we address the fundamentals of the economy generally, so that businesses can thrive. Whether we are talking about large enterprises, foreign investments, micro enterprises, small businesses, if the economy grows across all levels and the benefits of economic reforms cascade down through all strata of businesses, the youth will find their space conveniently. Because when we talk about this micro kind of intervention, we are dealing with a population of over 200 million people. How many people can we give these interventions to? Symbolically, yes, it's fine that we are intervening here, we are intervening there. But more importantly is to create the environment, because it is entrepreneurs that drive an economy. And many young entrepreneurs are emerging. You know? So if we create the environment for entrepreneurship to thrive, we'll be able to address all of these issues. And we have a lot more impact on the economy. And the youth, we are seeing a lot of creativity of the youth, especially in ICT, in the entertainment industry, in the service sector. A lot of creativity and innovation have manifested over the last few years. Whether we can ascribe that to government policy or just the fact that the youth themselves are trying to be creative to survive in the midst of high unemployment is a different conversation entirely. But the youth have been able to do a lot on their own. And I must say, not with so much support. Many of them are in diaspora, not necessarily illegally, so doing a whole lot just to make ends meet and to also make sure that they do a lot. But let me also say this, because we tend to federalize all issues. The subnationals have their role to play in this economy. The local governments have their role to play in this economy. When we are talking about youth, when we are talking about poverty, when we are talking about food inflation, when we are talking about rural infrastructure, the subnationals have a role to play. But most time we have conversation, everybody is looking at the federal. When anything goes, people look at the federal. So we should also broaden the scope of conversation to interrogate what the state governments are bringing to the table. Many of them are sitting on billions, sometimes hundreds of billions of naira. Allocation, internally generated revenue, special allocation from derivation and all of that. And yet when you go to some of these locations, the youths they are not doing particularly so well. Many of them are still out of school. And that is what is hurting us today. Because we have not focused sufficiently in investing in our youth. Now many of them have become adults. They have become a big problem, a big irritation to the whole country. So I think that broadening of the conversation is also very important.
I really do appreciate the fact that you went there. And that informs my next question. Who is supposed to hold the governors accountable? Now, I want to link that to a question one of our listeners is intending to ask you. He says, my question is, who is supposed to regulate the operator in the oil industry? Is it the president, the NNPC, or the Petroleum Industry Act? I ask because it's just as if the act has not been passed and nobody is making reference to it. So here, there's a question of accountability on every front. So my question to you is, who is supposed to hold the governors accountable? That's one. And here, who is supposed to regulate operators in the industry, in the oil industry? So here you have a chance to answer the question, because maybe that can help point us into who we, the people, are supposed to hold accountable as far as charging the governors with accountability.
Well, the structure of our democracy is such that the legislature have a primary responsibility of oversight over the executive. So the primary responsibility of accountability, demanding accountability, demanding oversight, or ensuring oversight, lies largely with the state legislatures. Unfortunately, the character of legislators we have across the country, for most parts of the states, are such that the state assemblies are just like an extension of the executive or extension of the governor's office. So we have lost it to a large extent, in terms of what we expect the state assemblies to bring to the table in terms of accountability. So I think the civil society have a big role to play here, to also beam searchlight on the state governments, because the state assemblies have disappointed. It's a major disappointment in many of the states. So we need to demand accountability as citizens, because sovereignty also belongs to the people. We are the ones that voted them in. We are like their employers anyway. So if they are not delivering and the state assemblies are not doing what they are supposed to do, as citizens, we should have a way to also engage them. So in this kind of democracy, the civil society have a lot of role to play to demand this accountability.
And would you have the answer?
That is what I will say around that.
Okay.
Then on the oil and gas sector, there are institutional structures, regulating we just have regulating the sector. Before now, we used to have the DPR and we have PPR and all of them. Then there was this reform that was occasioned by the PIA. We now have all manner of acronyms, NMPPRA or something. No, there's a regulator for the upstream, there's a regulator for the downstream. Now, how effectively are they regulating is a completely different matter. Because in terms of outcomes and impact, I'm not sure we are seeing much results. And that's why we agree with the person who sent in the message that nothing much has changed. Because we were expecting that with the reforms, we have a much more independent NNPC, for instance. Because it's supposed to now be, NNPC limited. But apparently, not much has changed. And what I was hoping that we see an oil sector that will even be listed on the stock exchange, locally and even abroad, so that the quality of governance, quality of corporate governance can improve. So that the hold on that sector by the government will also be less. I mean, look at what we're experiencing with our Nigeria LNG. We cannot compare it to what is happening with NNPC. Because NLNG is more professionally run. And we don't hear all these stories of scandals and things around the company. So that is the direction I think we should be going.
Okay.
As to whether we are where we should be, I'm not sure we are there yet.
So you're an economist.
But we need to do a lot more to unlock value from oil and gas. We need to do a lot more.
That was honestly the question I wanted to ask you. Nominally, are we where we are? You can't be thinking when you look at the figures. You already see the figures. I mean, that there is the faith in country. There is the optimism that things will change. But where we are right now, we are worse off. That is the statement of fact. Or am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. There's still a lot that we need to do. Because it's like, particularly for this oil and gas sector, it's as if it's still a business as usual. We have seen the PIA, we have seen some reforms, we have seen some changes in the names and designation of the regulator, the operators, and so on. But in terms of outcomes, in terms of impact, I don't think we haven't seen much.
We haven't.
Unfortunately, we haven't seen much.
Thank you so much for your time, for your knowledge, which you shared, both economic and personal. I do appreciate your commitment to being on the show this afternoon. Thank you, sir, for being here. And I hope to have you again.
Thank you very much, Joyce.
Thank you. Lagos, Nigeria, we have been speaking with Dr. Muda Yusuf, immediate DG of the Nigeria Chamber of Commerce. And, well, we try to put some economics to the figures that you may have heard by the president. Well, I guess if you look at it otherwise, you may be persuaded by what appears to be growth. But if you look at it nominally and you take into consideration inflation, you look at the devaluation of the naira, if you look at the naira against the dollar, given it being that we're a dollarized economy, yes, nothing has happened. But the president is asking us to believe and give this some time. And maybe this will take some, according to our guest, heavy lifting. Our hope is that our president is the guy who can lift the obstacles out of our way. We're off on a break. We'll be right back. Do not go anywhere. We're 99.3. This is Nigeria Info.
What makes radio the place to be? Well, that's because we start from here.
This is a compound, not 1, 2, 3, that somebody will come and say, I'm the only one coming in another 1 or 2 months. You will see that place is like a market. Yes.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.